Welcome to Good Better Brokers Best of 2024. This episode features highlights from our top 5 most downloaded episodes of the year. We hope you enjoy the conversation.
The way we look at it is, if you're brand new and you just started doing this, you're not going to have a massive database of past clients, right? But there are a lot of us that have been doing this for a very long time. So those past clients are something that shouldn't be ignored. And, reaching out to your past clients, just checking in is such a huge part of our business. And we believe that this is something, there's no real timeline on when you should do it or how often you should do it. Personally, I believe 2 to 3 times a year, just reaching out to any of your past client, regardless of the loan they have, even if they're at 3.5%. And the reason is because there's so much that comes out of that. A big part of that is referrals, right? I know there's a lot of us that get realtor referrals and they're great, right? Having all our realtor partners, but I do believe that your past clients is such a massive net because you could potentially have people all across the country that are fighting for you when they're talking to their friends, family, coworkers, and a mortgage pops up. They're not going to think to bring up the name Andi Numan unless Andi Numan has said hello recently. If I haven't talked to one of my clients in a year, 2 years, they're not going to remember me as often as if I'm saying hi, just checking in, 2 to 3 times a year. So the potential of getting more referrals or even refinancing that client is significantly higher when you constantly touch base.
Okay, so you said 2 to 3 times a year is the way you approach it as far as how often you should reach out. You know this as well as I do. There are probably some people listening to this who say, I can't do that. They're in a 2.5% rate. They're in a 3% rate. What am I going to say to them that's not going to make them angry, that's going to make them want to hang up the phone on me? So I want you to tell our listeners about how you approach these conversations when you do these 2 to 3 times a year check-ins with your clients.
Right. So for us, the approach when you're reaching out to a past client, it's not about selling them something. That's the most important thing. It's truly checking in on your past clients. There's going to be a lot of clients that don't have equity, right? And ahead of time they don't have equity, which you should be doing your research prior to calling somebody. Just double checking, see where the market value is of their home now. But if there's people that are in a great interest rate in the low 5s that don't have a ton of room in equity there to where you can't really take any cash out, calling them just to check in is okay. And kind of like this, like, hey, Justin, I don't know if you remember me or you've saved my number. Again, this is Andi Numan. Remember when I did your loan? Yes. Oh, hey, how have you been? Look, I'm just reaching out to see if you have any questions about anything or if I can help you with anything at all. Just wanted to touch base with you. I'm not really asking them for anything in that regards. It's just truly checking in, because the way I look at it is if you're constantly trying to sell and you're selling out of the blue to your past clients, they're going to be less prone to pick up your phone call. So if you're just truly checking in, it's a nice conversation. And when you do call all the time, it's like, oh, okay, Andy's just calling to say hi. Everything's good. And at the end, if you drop in, remember, if you have any friends or family, don't forget to give them my number.
You can tell when you first meet a real estate agent, they have their guard up. And I do not blame them one bit, because if I was let down time after time, I'd think, oh, this is another loan officer who talks a big game but doesn't deliver. So I don't let it faze me when they have their guard up at first. Little by little, I prove to them that I'm a man of my word, and what I'm telling you that I'm going to do, I'm actually going to do. And you can see the shift where, it'll be a Saturday and they'll send you maybe a buyer and like, can you call this guy today? And the buyer's not even looking to do anything today. And then all of a sudden, a couple months later, once you create that relationship, they're like, hey, I have a buyer for you today, but listen, spend the weekend with your family. You can call them on. You can see that shift where they start treating you like a partner instead of like just some other lender.
All right, you have a specific strategy with your buyer's agents when it comes to emails. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so every time we put an offer in with every single real estate agent that I work with, I want to be copied on the offer. Like when you're submitting the offer to the listing agent, I want to be copied on there. And that does a few things. Number one, gets my name out there more, even if the offer is not getting accepted. Of course, I call the listing agent as well, but I want them to see that email, because then I'm going to mention a few things about the deal. I'm going to let them know about the buyers are fully vetted, let them know I know the closing date and we're going to hit that. And it also helps because it shows the listing agent that I wasn't a by accident lender. It's not like the buyer just chose me randomly online. It shows that this buyer's agent, I have a relationship with them, because if the buyer's agent copies the lender, that shows the listing agent, oh, they have a relationship, so this lender isn't some random lender.
So you're telling me that your goal by the end of the transaction is to make sure that all involved parties were completely blown away by the service that you provided for them. So how do you make sure that that is the case, Ian?
So we have a team. There's no way I could do everything by myself. So my loan partner, he does a really good job of, we kind of tag team to make sure everybody, transaction coordinator, title company, listing, everybody, because when we're at the closing table, I love hearing like, oh man, what a great job. Like the title company, the buyer's agent, the listing agent, like I love hearing that. It gives me fulfillment to listen to them talk about, like we had such a great experience. So I make sure everybody's getting an update. No one's waiting around. Even if there's a bumpy road, you'd be surprised how many times I've picked up a listing agent to work with me on a bumpy road transaction, because when they see that little bumpy road and you don't hide from them and you update them, you pick up your call every time. Once it gets to closing, they're so thrilled. They're like, man, this guy got it to closing and he didn't hide from me and he gave me updates. So it makes a big difference there.
The more you talk, the more I just keep going back to communication and how big that is to your business. And you have a great story, actually, of a realtor who reached out to you late at night. And it wasn't because they needed something. They were just trying to test you, weren't they?
Yeah, so it was actually one of the first real estate, it might have been the second real estate agent that I ever worked with, right? This was a couple years ago that we worked together when I first got into the purchase business. And then, we drifted apart. He someone was doing some big Zillow spend with him. So he started working with somebody else, and him and his team were out together out at a bar. And they were trying to figure out who to work with. They're like, they weren't happy with their current lender. So he said, he goes, this guy Ian I used to work with, I have never been more happy with the service. And he goes, I will bet you if it was like maybe around 10 o'clock. He said, I bet you if I text him right now, we didn't talk for at least 8 months. He's like, I bet you if I text him right now, he'll answer me within 10 minutes. So him and his team were sitting there. Within 5 seconds, I replied, hey, bud. And he just wrote, man, I got to tell you, you have no idea how blown away my team is. I told him you would answer right away. And he's like, you did it, I was literally laying in bed and I saw it pop up. I'm like, oh, hey, bud. And I didn't get a deal from this guy maybe in 2 years, but I still right away. He's like, I wanted to prove to them that you're the guy that we should work with.
I meet with a lot of people and they say, let me see your calendar. So I'll show them my calendar. And if your calendar's not full, then what are you actually doing, right? So you want to try to fill that calendar up as much stuff as you can. They're like, well, how are you going to be in 3 places at one time? Well, you know what? You're going to try, because things will happen. Somebody will be late. Somebody will cancel. Somebody will change. Something will come up. And if it's important to you, you'll get through it all.
Yeah, you mentioned that you overschedule yourself, but that is very much by design, because like you said, things do come up. People are going to have to cancel. So for you, it's all about making sure that you're maximizing every single day.
That's it. Every single day. Even with my kids, getting all their stuff. I have them now. My daughter, she's 14. I have her putting stuff on my calendar now and sending me emails and Google invites. And she's like, Dad, I got basketball practice here. And then my other daughter, I got soccer game here. And I'm like, you got to put it all on the calendar. And then we got closings. I put them on the calendar. We go to all the closings. We got realtor coffees. We got luncheons. We got networking events. We do a lot of CE training classes. Like I said, we're in the people business. So if you're sitting behind your computer and you're working, that's great, but that's not how you need to do this business.
Yeah, it's a great point. I want to ask you more about that, because if there is somebody listening to this who is hesitant to get out there as much as you are, and they're maybe sitting behind their desk and waiting for it to come to them, what would you say to them to encourage them to get out there and really go out and meet with more people?
Yeah, I just live it every day. You got to suit up, you got to show up, and you got to follow up, right? So the first thing is just to get out and do it. I mean, you might be uncomfortable the first time you go do a couple things and go to a couple of realtor events or walk into an open house or go to a couple of other socials that you have. But there's always time where I'll sit there and I'm like, man, it's been a long day. I'm tired. I just want to go home. I'm like, nope, we got this thing. Let's just go do it. And I'll show up, and the next thing you know, boom, 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 and then it just starts falling, because you never know where that next opportunity is going to come from. So I take the approach I have to be doing it every day, because I never know when my phone's going to ring, right? And that fear of my phone's not going to ring and I'm not going to do another deal, so I got to get out there and make it happen.
You mentioned it, so I have to ask you, the suit up, show up, follow up. It's something of a brand for you now. It's a hashtag on your social media. Yeah. Do people in your market know you from that brand?
They do. Yeah, it's funny. They do. So that I show up, and sometimes I show up and I'm not wearing a suit. They're like, where's the suit? So I get called out for that. But yeah, so it's kind of like the brand that you created for yourself, and they know that that if they see me and it's going to be an event, then I'm going to be suiting up. So I always want to see what kind of suit I have, which is good because my suit guy, he's loving it because he's making a killing. And actually should have probably gotten the suit business, but I gave him like 15 referrals now on all the suits he's getting from me showing up. But then you got to follow up as well with them also. So not just showing up to the events and not going to the items and stuff that you have, but you got to make sure you follow with them.
We're going to talk more about the follow-up game in just a little bit, but I want to ask you more about the sales activities over the last couple of years in particular, because we talked about it off the top of the conversation. You've been in this industry 20 years, but the last 2 years, 22 and 23, what a wild ride it has been. So looking back over those years, Ryan, what has worked well for you in particular?
A lot of social media. I mean, to be honest with you, we got to adapt to social media. So we've been doing a lot of videos. We got our CRM that we use, so we send out weekly updates. And you would think that people wouldn't like that stuff, but people love it. And they're like, we skip 1 week for the holidays. Like, where's the video? So it's like social media has been great. It's been an awesome sales activity that we've been doing to get the attention of people and stay top of mind as well. And then just the old school, man, picking up the phone. Like, I pick up the phone, and if I haven't hit 70 calls on my phone for a day, I look down and I'm like, have I even worked today? So just picking up the phone and calling people, having a conversation with them, calling all the realtors you got, calling your listing agents, calling all your past clients. Just go through your phone and just call someone. If you haven't talked to them in a while, just call them, man. You'll be surprised at how much stuff happens just by picking up the phone.
In most sales roles, you're not going to see hey, I called X amount of realtors, I'm going to see X amount of results. And I think most people that have worked sales understand that, but there are people that transition out of, a more traditional role into the mortgage world. And I think it's important to understand that you're going to be working 24 hours a day, or not 24 hours, but 24/7, and not necessarily always see results. Whereas if you were in, a traditional salary role, you work 8 hours, you're getting, exactly what you're getting. So it's going to have a more exponential progression where you're going to spend so much time in the lift off of your business, but hopefully when you're up in orbit, you're kind of coasting. You set things in process and business is somewhat automated. But I think it's that initial, we'll call it 2 years that most people get discouraged by. They're like, man, I'm doing all these things, I'm not necessarily seeing the results. And it's not intended to be that way.
What is it like to prepare yourself for that mentally? Or is it something that you have to experience first to then really know what it feels like to be, like you said, dialed in 24 hours a day and know that you're going to put in sometimes more work than you get results from it? I mean, how do you describe what that has felt like for you?
Yeah, for me personally, when I left, I was prepared only because I knew, hey, this isn't something that I prepared myself for worst case. I said, hey, this is something that will take time to build. So if you're someone who is hoping to have success, and I'm not necessarily being pessimistic about it, but I think you have to be prepared to have setbacks. Have a savings account. Ask yourself if you're comfortable, giving everything. Do you have the time? Do you have the energy? Are you comfortable restarting in a career? What does that look like? Have you done it before? So prepare yourself mentally so that when those setbacks come, you're not as drawn back. And I always remind myself, when setbacks come, I tell myself, like, you knew it would be like this. You told yourself you'd be in this position. So just reset and keep moving.
That kind of dovetails into the next thing I want to ask you about, which is just, the impact on your life. I'm not even talking about business. I'm talking about, your self-confidence, your daily structure, your health, your priorities. I mean, this is all tied together because this is, like you said, a huge part of your identity now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is your identity. You are Jalen Scott, loan officer. This is who you are. So I think when you're selling yourself, because that's what you're selling, people work with who they know, like, and trust. You're selling yourself now. So it takes a lot of reflection, like, am I the person that someone would want to buy a home from or get a mortgage through? So you've got to check yourself financially. You got to check yourself health-wise, all the things that you're doing in your life. Are you spending too much time, just hanging out with the wrong people, going out, all those things. So that's something that I think most people will come to find is the successful loan officers, it is who they are. It's not, it's not one of those careers that you clock out from and you're done with. You are a loan officer and you're selling yourself. So you need to make sure that you are happy with who you are and you've checked all those other boxes personally. Is that something in your mind that you have to be aware of in advance? Or is it something that you quickly figure out once you get into, this profession, this job, and you figure out what it takes? You quickly find it out because, you're going to have setbacks. So you're going to face a lot of self-doubt. And you're going to say, am I the right person? You're going to have trouble presenting yourself online. And I think anyone that's made content has had that. So I think it's something that will quickly be presented to you, so you should be aware and ready for it. Where it's memorable and they want to tell all their friends, not just about us, but their agent. I'm completely referral based, so I want to make sure that the agent understands that they're our client as well. So we try to wow both, or everyone really. And it's really paying attention to the details, listening to their concerns, and staying ahead of maybe anticipating what they might ask us. So if we can beat them to that answer before they ask the question, they feel, I think, more calm and cared for, really. In reading up about you before this interview, I was on your LinkedIn, and you go into great detail about the lengths that you go to in helping your borrowers find a home, not just get the mortgage, but find a home. Walk us through that. So I call every listing agent. When the offer goes through, I ask my agents to either copy me on the email or shoot me a text. And I call and I let them know I'm not a call center, which I think is a really big deal. And that, obviously we have UWM, we can close things very quickly. We pre-underwrite everything. Sometimes we'll get a TBD, just trying to get every shred of paper so that the client doesn't have to panic. Nobody wants to be told, oh, you need another piece of paper after contract. So we really try to go above and beyond to make sure people are very, very, I think the best word is calm, because I think people get really nervous. Yeah. Yeah, this is a stressful business, let's be honest, especially, if it's a first-time home buyer and you look at, the market and say there's somebody who wants nothing more than to finally find that dream home. And maybe, Lauren, it's a client of yours and they've had multiple offers get rejected. They keep missing out. I mean, from your perspective, what does that do to your mindset when you're working with somebody who's in that position? I want to show them all of the ways that it's not about the rate, really. If they're in multiple offers, it has nothing to do with the rate, really. It's more, let me show you if you offered a little more. We have tools, some of them from UWM, I think House Canary. I also use Mortgage Coach a lot to show the true cost and how that property might appreciate in a year. So the $10,000 or so that they put in now is really going to benefit them, because they'll get the house, they'll be happy, and they can stop the shopping.
Thank you for watching Good Better Broker and helping us support independent mortgage brokers everywhere. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified about new videos, as well as your preferred podcast platform for a new episode every other Tuesday.